Thanks, Nancy. Can everybody hear me?
I can.
Okay, at least one of you can. All right, I see someone else can too. Okay, great. Let me go ahead and get my slideshow up. Thank you all for joining me today. I see a lot of you are from the West Coast. I am actually on the East Coast. I am in Tampa, Florida. And here we go. Actually. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started. As Nancy mentioned, my presentation is titled Great Expectations, the process of developing a course prototype prior to final quality review. This is something that my department started doing a few years ago, and we've had really great success with it. So I just thought it was just an important topic to share with everybody, especially in this QM community that we've all formed. I work at the University of South Florida in Tampa, as I mentioned. I am a learning designer. My department, though, is made up of 4 subgroups. We have learning designers, videographers, multimedia developers, and faculty support. And then we partner with faculty to create their high-quality, engaging online courses that ultimately meet the needs of student learning outcomes and our diverse learners today. Our team is also unique in that we focus primarily on the production of media-rich materials to give that extra engagement with students and giving that extra emphasis on the student learning outcomes. So as I mentioned, we're talking about prototypes, and our development process within my department is a little different. We follow a semester timeline, and originally we started off with a timeline. You'll see it here on the left side. It was our original development process, and we've always measured our courses against some sort of quality standard, but it wasn't until about 2 years ago that we started implementing QM, and we realized we needed to change a couple of things. So you'll notice we have a few different phases in our timeline. We have a kickoff phase, a planning phase, development, some fixed dates thrown in there, and then we have the closeout phase. So at this point, we were looking at our whole process and thinking, we're getting all the way to the end, and we're then telling faculty members, your course isn't exactly meeting quality standards. And at that point, it can occasionally be too late because a lot of times they're launching their course in a couple of weeks, or they're going on sabbatical, or they're passing it off to someone else. So how are they supposed to implement those changes to meet those quality standards, especially the required ones? So we kind of regrouped and made some modifications to the same timeline. And you'll notice if you look at the revised process on the right-hand side, we added in a design and prototype phase. So we've combined our planning and analysis, made that kind of our kickoff. And the design and prototype really gives us an opportunity to look at the course overall, but take a small subsect of that course, build it out, and really investigate and look at it and make sure everything is working and set up the way we intended, the faculty intended, to make sure our students will really engage with it, to make sure the tools work, and to make sure that that beginning part of the course really meets our quality standards. Otherwise, getting all the way to the end and then having to go back and make modifications wasn't really working for our faculty demographic. So we've been finding that doing that earlier on in our development process and being able to go back in and make the modifications and recommendations and suggestions based on the standards, that they then have more time to really then look at their content and reconceptualize things as needed. And it also gives us as the learning designers and us as a department the opportunity to say, okay, this didn't work as we intended. This doesn't look how we wanted it to look design-wise, or the tools aren't meeting the expectations that we had set out for. Yes.
I'm sorry, people aren't seeing what you're describing on the screen. So you might want to try sharing.
Let me see. I have a share. All right, hold on just a second. Let me stop sharing and I can set it up again.
Yeah, everyone's saying that they don't seem to be seeing what you're describing.
Sorry, everybody. Let me try that again. Here. Can everyone see? Does everyone see a Canvas page? Because that's not what I want you all to see. So let's try again.
Okay, we're seeing the Dev MHS 6607 Behavioral Consultation Collaborative.
Okay, let me now start my presentation. I'll show everyone the process again. Sorry about that, everybody.
Oh, it's okay.
Learning curve. Okay, can everyone see that?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I'll backtrack a little bit then. So we had our original process, and that's the one on the left-hand side, and we moved forward to our revised process. So the revised process, if you're looking at that now on the right, it incorporates a planning and analysis at the beginning. This is where we give faculty members the opportunity to really look at their course holistically, think about their content, think about what they typically teach to, what they teach with, how they really facilitate that engagement in a face-to-face setting or a previous online setting, and how can we reconceptualize that. Then we take everything that we've planned and analyzed, and we build the prototype. The prototype for us is typically a third of the course, so a lot of our courses tend to be roughly 12 modules in Canvas. So we usually build out anywhere between 3 to 4 modules just for the prototype. And it doesn't have to be the first 3 or 4. It could be sporadic modules or the last 4 modules, whatever. But this was just really giving us that opportunity to sit down with the faculty members and say, let's just build out a part of it, see how it works, make sure we're all getting along with the same vision here, and then we regroup if necessary, and we move into the implementation phase, which comes next, and that's where then we build out the entire rest of the course. And then at the very end, we do our final evaluation. So the prototype, we use the QM Rubric, and we go through it just as we would at the end. However, it doesn't count against their overall quality of the course. And that has really, really helped us in a few different things. So I'm going to go into a little bit more specific detail here. So this is just our design and prototype. And Nancy, can everyone still see this slide? I just want to make sure I didn't lose anybody. All right. So our design and prototype process here, and this is just going off of the last slide, just narrowing it in a little bit more. We have our planning meeting. And our planning meeting is, like I mentioned, we map out that content. We use a course map. We look at the whole course, all of the content. And then we sit down with the faculty members, and sometimes even as a team internally, and we strategize what delivery methods we want to use for that content. And then we organize the content in an order that works for the faculty member that we think will work for the students. Then we move over to gathering and developing the prototype content. And a lot of times the faculty members have things existing. Other times we have to curate that content. So we start getting that together. And then we start to think about what kind of tools we want to use to create that content. So sometimes we want a video or an animation. We're going to look more towards something like Beyond or Storyline to create that engagement. Then we select the course design aesthetic, and all of our courses within our department at least have a specific design tailored to them. So we give the faculty an option of different templates that we offer. They get to pick that. Sometimes they realize after the prototype they don't like that design aesthetic, and so we change it out. But this at least gives them the opportunity to see it in real life in Canvas and see if it works for them and their students. Then we do the prototype review. So myself and oftentimes other designers, we look at the course against a quality rubric, the same that's in the QM system. But we just do it internally. So the faculty are not a part of this review. This is just our internal team. Sometimes we have students look at it if we're a little hesitant on how students will take to any of the design decisions that we've made or any of the tools. We do have student assistants that work on our team, and getting their input is oftentimes very valuable because they give us that firsthand user experience. So we test the modules and just do quality control. Then we have the subject matter expert, the faculty member. They also have access to the prototype. They look through it, they make sure it works for them, because ultimately, even though we're developing these courses for the students, we want to make sure that everything that we're putting into the course, the faculty member will be able to teach and will be able to facilitate and implement. We don't want to start utilizing tools that then they feel like they can't maintain or keep up with. So we want to make sure that everything is user-friendly for the faculty and for the students. Then we do the prototype review. So like I mentioned earlier, we use the QM rubric. We were doing the review originally in just an Excel spreadsheet with the same review questions, but because we were still kind of unsure of how we wanted to implement this moving forward, we were just using an Excel doc and collecting our data through that. We've since then switched over to the QM system, but we're just using self-reviews just as an internal document. Nothing is getting sent to the faculty as a hard copy. It's just for our internal purposes, and then we share those recommendations with faculty members later. And when I have a couple more slides, and then I'll show you kind of what that all looks like. And then the nice thing about this being a prototype, and I think the biggest thing that really drives this whole concept home, is that faculty members and us as the instructional designers, we can then go back and make any necessary revisions. So if something isn't working, or if something just isn't getting set up the way we expected, or the faculty member realizes, hey, I think this is going to be too much maintenance for me, or this tool might be too much, or I don't like how many modules I have, or maybe I want to adjust and put two of these concepts in one instead of having them separate. This is the opportunity for all of that to take place and for all of that to happen. It also gives us the chance to look at everything and say, you know, I see you have really good student learning outcomes, but we can't see where everything is aligned or where your outcomes are aligning to. And then they can go back and make those adjustments instead of waiting until the very end and then telling them that they need all of these things that they have to fix within, you know, such a short time span before they go ahead and teach it. So impact. The numbers look a little different because we've only done it for a couple of years, and I'm only looking at spring semesters, and our course numbers are different every semester, but this was the best data that I could come up with for now. But you'll notice that back in the spring of 2017, we had 25 courses that met quality and 5 that didn't. The following year, once we started with the prototype reviews, we had 30 that met and only 1 that didn't. So not huge, but still significant, because ultimately those courses still met quality because they had that extra opportunity to go in and possibly fix things. And we've gotten great feedback from our faculty members and from our instructional designers. Everyone seems to really like this process. It's really nice, and I'm going to mimic what my colleague Melissa said in one of these quotes, but it really does tie in the standards and really drives them home to like really tell faculty, you know, these are our best practices. This is why they're important. We really want to meet those quality standards. And a faculty member that I worked with also mentioned that having a prototype, because at first he was like, why do I need a prototype? Why can't we just review it at the end? I don't have time. I just want to get this done. And, you know, we've really tried to sell him on why this was so important. And sure enough, at the very end of his course, we always ask for feedback, he did say that implementing a prototype helped him see the areas that he needed to focus on and before he created the rest of his course. And that really gave him the chance to go in, regroup, and say, okay, I need to change some things. And his course came out great. So before I move into questions, I'm going to show you a couple of things here. All right, can everyone see this Canvas screen? I think I see some yeses. Okay. All right, so this is just a quick example. This course I've been working on, we are almost ready for a prototype review. And so you'll notice we incorporated a design aesthetic to it. But then there's still some highlighted things that the instructor needs to still work on. We go ahead and do that for them. Then if we go into the modules, you'll see we always have a getting started module, but you'll see that we only have 3 modules built out. Oh, no, I take that back, 4, sorry. 4 modules built out based on what was discussed and developed in that early planning phase. Each of these pages has some information on them, but you'll notice here on this first page, he does not provide, and he didn't provide in his planning document that we give all faculty members, but he didn't provide how his student learning outcomes are tying to his activities later on in the module. So that's still something that he's going to need to work on if he wants to get those points on his prototype quality review. But we build out all the readings, and this way they can see how everything's going to look. They can see it from a student's perspective. Once his lectures are in there, that will go there. So this really just is a nice way for them to see what their course will eventually look like as a whole. And then it gives us the opportunity to see what still needs to be done and what still needs improvement. I'm not going to show you the Excel spreadsheet because we haven't used that in, I think, 2 semesters. So now we're doing the self-review. What's really nice about this is that if we wanted to share it with the faculty members, we could. But a lot of times for the prototype review, we're just looking for the specific things that we want to really drive home for our implementation phase. So we just end up making a little box note or just typing this out in an email, and we provide the feedback, we provide the standard that it ties back into, any suggestions that we might have on how they can meet those standards. We put all of that here for them. And then that way they go back or they work with us on implementing those changes. And we've really found this to be successful, and they do appreciate it at the end. So I'm gonna go back to my slideshow now because I have one last slide with some common Q&As, and then I will be open for questions. So a couple of questions that we typically get when we bring up prototypes is the tool, which I kind of already touched on. We used to use Excel, now we're using the self-reviews in the QM system, and both were okay. But the QM system, having that self-review is really nice. You can share it then as a PDF. You can go back in and make any modifications if you needed to. And if you wanted to send that whole document to the faculty member for review, like let's say there were a lot of standards that still needed improvement, it just gives them a really nice overview. The way it sends it out is very professional in that nice PDF. So I would recommend that if you want to go with the prototype route. Our faculty involved in the prototype review, they are not. We discuss with them at the end. We allow them to look it over before we start the official prototype review, but they don't conduct a review themselves for prototype. Then we also get asked a lot, who conducts the prototype review? Typically, it's not the developing designer, so I wouldn't do a prototype review of the course I'm developing. We usually have a secondary learning designer, sometimes a student. They'll review it and they'll give us the feedback. We'll look it over, see if we agree, disagree, and then we'll go back to the faculty member. And lastly, what happens if the prototype doesn't meet quality standards? Then it doesn't have to, because it's only the prototype. So we still have plenty of time in our development phase to go back in, make the necessary changes, and hope that those changes get implemented and that the faculty member takes our recommendations before the final quality review at the very end. So those are just some general questions we typically get, but we can now open it up to any other questions you might have.
Okay. Alana, can you see the Q&A, or would you like me to read that to you?
Let me see.
We do have 4 questions
I
there.
have it. Okay, I see it. Where are the phases? Here, I can pull that back up. Let me go. All right, let me move this out of the way. All right, so these are our phases we have, and we're looking at the revised process on the right. So we have the planning and analysis phase, the design and prototype phase, an implementation phase, and then our evaluation and closeout at the very end. So each of these phases plays a really critical role, but it also helps kind of chunk out an entire semester, since we do develop on an entire semester timeline, and it helps keep everything organized, keep everybody on track. If things fall behind, it's okay. We're always flexible, but it's just nice to know that there is just a spot of time where we're only working on design and prototype. Okay. Then, are these slides available? I can make them available. I know I sent them to Beth last week, but I'm happy to send them to anyone that needs them. And in my very last slide has my contact information, so you can always feel free to reach out if you need a copy of anything. I'm happy to share. All right, clarification, you meet with faculty who give you course content and you create the prototype. Yes, so we meet with faculty during the planning and analysis phase at the very beginning, and we talk about their course, we talk about any ideas that they have, any needs specific to them or their students, and we start really mapping out a whole overview of the course, what they want as far as content in each module, if they typically do some sort of simulation or some sort of scenario-based training, they tell us that, and we start thinking of ways that we can make that happen in a virtual space. So that's what we do during the planning and analysis phase, and that's when we start building it out in the prototype phase to see if that's actually a good use of the space. Are the students trained to conduct the review? The students aren't doing the QM review per se. They're really just looking at the content and the structure through a student lens, just to kind of give us the feedback of, this makes sense to me, this doesn't, or this might need more clarification. I need a more specific rubric, or I really had trouble accessing this tool that you posted. The video wasn't working right, things like that. So it's nothing super specific to QM that they would need training on. It's just more looking at it from an informal student perspective. The we on our prototype team, on our prototype review team, it's typically our learning designers, there's about 13 of us. So we have 13 different designers, and we rotate sometimes depending on the course size, depending on the how cumbersome a course development is. There's 2 designers assigned to the course, so the secondary designer will do the prototype review, but it's never the lead instructional designer that does the prototype review. It's always a secondary person. Do faculty have access to PD for teaching online or in professional development? Yes, so our faculty go through a training called the Online Instructor Certification, and that is specific to our university and how we implement QM and what our online teaching expectations are. So they get that kind of orientation, and we're just starting them on doing their own QM reviews. That's something that was going to happen this semester, but now with COVID-19, I'm not really sure how that process will work. So we haven't had any faculty members to date review their own courses. It's always been an internal review, and we decide if it meets quality standards or not. But it is not technically voluntary, or it wasn't going to be voluntary. It's something that we did get support from the departments and colleges. So that's where we are with that one. How do you assess if the assignments or activities, etc., meet the learning objectives? That is tough. That is something that as a department, we've gone back and forth in meetings about that, because we aren't the content experts. So we don't, we're not really sure how what the outcomes of the math activity are. We're really just looking at if the outcome says that they're going to discuss some topic, is there a discussion there? And is it engaging? If the outcome says that they're going to draw or create, where are they doing that within the course? We're really just looking for that alignment. We're not looking at specifically how well the activity or assignment is being done by the student, if that makes sense.
Okay, I think we have one more question. I think we
Yeah.
can squeeze that one in, so go ahead.
Okay. Are the people completing the prototype reviews QM peer reviewers? Do you do a final review, the formal review? Yes. So everyone on our team has been through the QM training. We are all certified in that, but we're not doing it as peer reviewers for the prototype review. We're just doing the self-reviews. And then do you do the final review of the formal? Yes, and our final review is the formal review process.
Okay, one more and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, when you said faculty do their own reviews, do you mean they're encouraged to complete the QM self-review for themselves or someone else? Yes. So this semester we were going to implement them doing a review on their own course. We just never got there because now everyone is working from home. Things have changed now in our university, so that's kind of on hold right now, but they were going to review their own courses. And I think that's it.
Yep.
So let me put up my contact slide. Feel free to email me if you have any questions, if you need any documents, or if you just want to know more about the prototype process. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can. But thank you all for joining me today, and I hope everyone stays safe and healthy.
Thank you so much.